For this video, we're going to be discussing ordering decimals, fractions, percents, and numbers in scientific notation. So to do this, we need to be able to find a way of comparing numbers that are written in all of these different forms. So one way to do that is to simply take all of the numbers, turn them into decimals, and then compare. For example, if we have like 38 over 70, and I want to know what is that as a decimal, all I do is I can take my calculator and I can say, well, 38 divided by 70 is just 0.54, we'll say we'll round it to 3. The same idea if I wanted to take, say, 29%. To turn a percent into a decimal, we just divide by 100 or simply move our decimal point 2 places and get 0.29. For scientific notation, we discussed in an earlier video that like 7.9 times 10 to the negative 2, we take our decimal point and we move it 2 places, fill any blanks with the zeros, and the number is 0.079. So let's take a look at an example where we're going to compare some numbers. So example 1 says, which is larger, 30 divided by 107 or 27%? Well, let's look at these. 30 divided by 107. If we turn that into a decimal, 30 divided by 107 gives me roughly 0.28. Alright? And 27%, if I turn that into a decimal, I go 1, 2, that is roughly 0.27. So if I want to compare them, well, I just look at them going through the decimal places. Their tens place on both of them is 2, so that doesn't really tell us anything. So we just go over to the next decimal point. Here I've got 8 and here I've got 7. Well, 8 is bigger than 7, so 0.28 is bigger than 0.27. So my answer is simply 30 over 107. All I'm doing is I'm comparing the different decimal places. If 2 match up, then I just cross those out and I go to the next. Here we see 8 is bigger, so this is the bigger number. Here's some other vocabulary we need to discuss, and that is ascending and descending. So if I put numbers in ascending order, that means to put them in order from least to greatest. So for example, these numbers here, 4, 7, 8.6, and 2 times 10 squared, are in order from least to greatest. 2.2 times 10 squared is just 200. So I'm going from the smallest number up to the biggest, least to greatest. Ascending is least to greatest. Descending order is the opposite. It means greatest to least. It means going down, like descending a mountain or descending some stairs. So for example, here I've got 350, 220%, which is 2.2, 1, and 0.56. These numbers go from the biggest down to the smallest. So whenever you see the word descending, it means greatest to least. So we take a look at another example here. Example 2 says place in ascending order. And I've got 48.2%, 0.475, 24 over 50, and 4.7 times 10 to the negative 2. And the way I would suggest doing these is to make a table like I've got here. In the first column, I've just got the number as it's written. In this column here, I'm going to write that number as a decimal. And then over here, in my third column, I'm going to put what number it should be in order. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these numbers, we're going to turn them into decimals, and then we're going to rank them in order. And it says ascending. So remember, that is least to greatest. All right, so let's start with 48.2%. To take 48.2% and turn it into a decimal, I divide by 100, which is simply moving my decimal 2 places to the left, and I get 0.482. Let's check that with our calculator. 48.2 divided by 100 gives me 0.482. All right, 0.475 is already a decimal, so I just leave it, 0.475. Now what you want to be careful here is to make sure your decimal points line up and each column lines up, because we're going to be comparing using that. Next is 24 divided by 50, which, to do 24 divided by 50, we just put that in our calculator. 24 divided by 50, which is 0.48. And you'll notice my other two numbers have 3 decimal places. This one only has 1. Well, to make them match, we'll just stick a 0 at the end there. And finally, 4.79 times 10 to the negative 2 power. Well, 10 to the negative 2, we move our decimal point 2 places to the left, fill in a blank with a 0, and I get 0.0479. Alright, so now, I'm going from least to greatest. So what I want to find first is what is my smallest number. So let's take a look at our first column here. Right? In which we just want to find the smallest number in our first column. Well, if we look through there, I've got a 4, a 4, a 4, and a 0. 0 is the smallest, so 4.79 times 10 to the negative 2, that's going to be the first number that I write down. That's 1. That is the smallest number in the list. Alright, so now I go to the second number, and I want to figure out what's my second number in the list going to be. Well, first decimal point is all 4s for this, so now I need to go to the second decimal place. Alright, if I go to the second decimal place, I've got 8, 7, 8. So my smallest is the 7 here, so 0.475 is going to be the second number that goes in my list. Alright, and as I go, I like to cross these out so that I know that I don't want to look at those anymore. So finally, I need to compare between 48.2% and 24 over 50. Well, 2 is bigger than 0, so 24 over 50, that's going to be the third number in my list. It's the third smallest. And finally, 48.2% is going to be number 4 on my list. So my answer is, I want to take these in order, or I want to take these and write them in order using how they were written originally. So the first number I write is 4.79 times 10 to the negative 2. Next up, number 2, 0.475. Next, number 3, 24/50. And finally, my fourth number, 48.2%. So all I did was turn all of these numbers into decimals, compare them, order them, and then rewrite them in the order that I want. So this is how you should do a problem like this. So your try-it problem for tonight is to put these numbers, 6.7 times 10 to the negative 1, 71%, 0.679, and 73 divided by 91 in descending order. Take a look back at your notes to remember exactly what that means. So you need to do this problem in your notes and bring it into class tomorrow.